Hi, everybody. In my State of the Union address, I talked about the idea of opportunity for all. Opportunity is the idea at the heart of this country, that no matter who you are or how you started out, with hard work and responsibility, you can get ahead. I ran for president to restore that idea, and I'm even more passionate about it today. Because while our economy has been growing for 4 years, and those at the top are doing better than ever, average wages have barely budged. Too many Americans are working harder than ever just to get by, let alone get ahead. And that's been true since long before the recession hit. We've got to reverse those trends. We've got to build an economy that works for everyone, not just a fortunate few. And the opportunity agenda I laid out last week will help us do that. It's an agenda with 4 parts. Number 1, more new jobs. Number 2, training folks with the skills to fill those jobs. Number 3, guaranteeing every child access to a world-class education. And number 4, making sure that hard work pays off, with wages you can live on, savings you can retire on, and health insurance that's there when you need it. I want to work with Congress on this agenda wherever I can. But in this year of action, whenever I can take steps without legislation to expand opportunity for more American families, I will. I've got a pen and I've got a phone. A pen to take executive action, and a phone to rally citizens and business leaders who are eager to create new jobs and new opportunities. And we've already begun. In Wisconsin, I ordered an across-the-board reform of our training programs to train folks with the skills employers need, and then match them to good jobs that need to be filled right now. In Pittsburgh, I directed the Treasury to create MyRA, a new way for working Americans, even if you're not wealthy, to start your own retirement savings. In Maryland, I rallied the leaders of some of America's biggest tech companies to help us make sure all our kids have access to high-speed internet and up-to-date technology to help them learn the skills they need for the new economy. And at the White House, I brought together business leaders who've committed to helping more unemployed Americans find work, no matter how long they've been looking. And I directed the federal government to make hiring decisions the same way, based on whether applicants can do the job, not when they last had a job. So when you hear me talking about using my pen and my phone to make a difference for middle-class Americans and those working to get into the middle class, that's what I mean. And I'm going to keep asking students and parents and business leaders to help, because there are millions of Americans outside Washington who are tired of stale political arguments, ready to move this country forward, and determined to restore the founding vision of opportunity for all. That's what I'm all about. Thanks. Have a great weekend. And to our Olympians in Sochi, go Team USA. People are still having sex. People are
You're listening to the Alternative Media Broadcast Network.
It's a show. There's one guy, the guy you just heard a second ago, who said, I don't care what Speaker Boehner says. He's not a fan of Speaker Boehner, nor am I. He said, I don't care what he says. Here's what the truth is. This president is covering up massive things that change us fundamentally. His name is Jim Bridenstine. He's from Oklahoma. His guest to the State of the Union is our guest as well tonight. You've met him but never seen him face-to-face, on this program at least. Charles Woods was the hero that we, or Charles Woods is the father of Tyrone Woods, who is the hero that we lost in Benghazi. Charles, first of all, hello, and good to see you for the first time. Good to talk to you again, sir.
Thank you, Glenn.
You're welcome. And Congressman, as John Boehner is telling everybody, you got to bring somebody who has been affected and hurt by health care. Why are you bringing Charles?
Well, as you clearly articulated, this president has a history of loading the gallery during a State of the Union address with victims of policies he'd like to see changed. And I thought it would be appropriate that I would bring a victim of a policy where he failed. And of course, Tyrone Woods is one of the brave Benghazi 4 who served our country valiantly and who many believe has been left in the battlefield by an administration that is willing to do everything possible to obfuscate the truth. And so I made an effort to reach out to Ty Woods' father, Charles Woods.
Thank you.
We've had some good conversations, and I think it's important that we highlight that we still have 4 Americans for whom there has been no justice from this administration.
No.
Not one person has been held accountable.
Beyond...
And I think it's time that we have a select committee that actually investigates this thoroughly, rather than having these stovepipe operations where each committee can only stay in their exclusive lane. And so that's why I wanted to bring Charles Woods.
Charles, I will tell you, and Congressman, it's not that the president failed. Look, everybody fails. Something always goes wrong. You're the president of the United States. Something is going to go wrong. It's the fact that, A, we left people behind. They could have saved these guys. We could have had a strike force over them quickly. Second of all, they lied to us over and over and over again. That's a totally different thing. I mean, Charles, I have to ask you, when we spoke a couple of years ago, you were mad as hell. And you had every right to be. Now that things have come out to show that you were right, you had reason to be mad, and nothing has happened, how do you feel as an American citizen?
Well, I feel that we still need the answers. I feel that the administration needs to tell us why they made the decision to abandon 30-some Americans at the consulate in Benghazi, and why they allowed 4 Americans, including my son, to be abandoned and killed.
Congressman, I don't know, how many interviews do you have lined up today?
Well, not a whole lot, quite frankly.
So
everybody's talking about different things, and
so let me just ask you this. The reason I knew the answer to that, because, this is not a story that nobody in the media wants to cover this story. Nobody has the balls to take it on, and it is where, excuse the expression, it's where the bodies are buried, and it fundamentally transforms our military. It fundamentally transforms the way Washington works and our trust to Washington. What do you think you're going to get out of this?
Here's what we know. Here's what we know, Glenn. We know that it was not a spontaneous demonstration. We know that this was an orchestrated terrorist attack on the consulate in Benghazi. We know that it had nothing to do with the insensitive video that the president blamed for 8 days after the attack. We know that video really had no social media hits at all until the day after the attack, and it was only because the president and the president's administration, Susan Rice, kept blaming the video. That video was not the cause of the attack. This was an al-Qaeda-affiliated attack, and everybody knows it. And yet they went on every TV show and started saying that it was something else, that it was a spontaneous demonstration that went crazy. That's just not the case. This was an attack. And not only after it was proven that it was an attack, then, I think it was 8 days later, it might have been 6 days later at the United Nations, the president continued the false narrative that it was because of this video that nobody had seen. Look, this administration needs to hold somebody accountable. There were failures up and down the chain of command here. And look, we need to keep this on the forefront. This is an important issue for our country. We've got to make sure this never happens again.
But you said, when you spoke there in Congress, and we just played the clip, you say somebody's got to be held accountable. The one to hold accountable is the President of the United States, and no one in your party or his party will ever hold that man accountable, and no one in the media will hold that man accountable. So what is the solution?
So there is a mechanism right now in the House of Representatives called the STOP Act, Stop This Overreaching Presidency. It's a bill, when you have a House of Representatives in Republican hands, and then you have Harry Reid in control of the Senate, you get a situation where you really can't hold the president accountable because Harry Reid protects him from everything. What the STOP Act does is it says, look, there's going to be a lawsuit against the president for not following his oath of office. His oath says that he will faithfully execute the laws of the country. And he's not doing that. He picks and chooses which laws he's going to enforce. When a law doesn't exist that he'd like to have and he can't get it pass through Congress, well, then he uses the bureaucracies of the executive branch to create law out of thin air, executive orders. And even worse, when he can't do that, he turns around and he uses foreign bodies like the United Nations to pass things like the United Nations Arms Trade Treaty, which creates an international gun registration. And this is not the proper role of the chief executive. The Second Amendment of the Constitution is not up for debate by foreign governments. Okay. And yet this president, he can't get what he wants done, so he uses every tool in his belt to go around the Constitution.
Congressman, I appreciate your frankness. I appreciate your hard work. You're in a lion's den. And Charles, I don't know how you feel about tonight before we let you both go. Any thoughts on what it's going to be like to sit there tonight and what is on your heart or on your mind?
Well, what's on my heart is answering that question is why did the administration abandon the 4 Americans and allow them to be murdered? And why has the administration not been forthcoming in allowing those people who were on the ground to testify, and why he has not released the appropriate documents?
Charles,
I sincerely hope that he does mention Benghazi.
I doubt he will, but I am so sorry for the loss of your son and all that served with him. I think it is going to be remembered, I hope, as one of the darkest moments, not only in this administration's, but our country's, and unfortunately, I'd have to say, our military's history as well, because there were people all up and down the chain of command that have remained silent themselves. Thank you very much, and I appreciate it, gentlemen. Good luck tonight.
Any of your people I can mention?
Titus, pull up. Took the head off the first man that came at me.
Soldiers, Pompey and the Senate have formally declared that Gaius Julius Caesar is an enemy of Rome. They have declared that I am a criminal. They have declared, in effect, that all of you also are criminals. Tribune's veto was not exercised. People's Tribune Mark Antony and 50 men of the 13th were assaulted by 1,000 head of Pompeian scum. A tribune of the plebs assaulted on the steps of the Senate House. Can you imagine a more terrible sacrilege? Our beloved republic is in the hands of madmen. This is a dark day, and I stand at a fork in the road. I can abide the law and surrender my arms to the Senate and watch the republic fall to tyranny and chaos. Or I can go home with my sword in my hand and run those maniacs to the Tarpeian Rock! Legionary Titus Pullo, step forward. Titus Pullo. And 50 brave men of the 13th fought Pompey's 1,000 in the Forum and saved the Tribune. It was Legionary Titus Pullo drew first blood. Here's 500 denarii. Very grateful.